Hello and welcome everyone to another amazing webinar. I see there are people from a lot of different countries joining, so thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you spending your weekend with us. The topic for today is very exciting. As we start 2025, I know a lot of you are embarking on your journey of working in the US as an internationally educated PT. And we thought that what other better topic to talk about other than, just talking about how to get started, what are the things that you need, how to not make mistakes, so on and so forth. I am joined by my amazing FACS team. I have Simon and Samra, who are both FACS team members. So if you have any questions, feel free to post it in chat. They will be responding to your questions in chat. And then at the end, I will also be taking any questions and answering those questions just to make sure that your queries are, your questions are answered. A little bit about FACS, just in case you're not aware, FACS is a non-profit organization. We are a 501c3 non-profit organization. We are the only organization in the US that is made by the physiotherapist foreign trained PTs for foreign trained PTs. So every single FACS team member has been through the exact same journey, has had to jump through exactly the same hoops that you have to jump through. So we get it. And we're happy to be here and happy to assist with all of your queries. So without further ado, let's talk about how to start your journey as an internationally educated PT in the US. The first step, if you're getting started with this journey, the first thing I would recommend you to do is to pick a state, okay? That is extremely important for you to do, which is to essentially pick a state. I am curious to know, how does everybody over here pick their states? I'm sure you have some states in mind, right? So how do you usually tend to pick your states? Do you just pick what you want? Do you ask a friend? I feel like I sort of know the answer that most of the people would have, but I'm still going to go ahead and ask you. Somebody said based on requirements. I think that's a very nice thing to do. And somebody said easy process as well. Somebody said New York because it was easy, but now which state should be preferred? Again, great questions, right? And that's exactly what I was going to talk about, right? When we talk about picking a state, remember it's very important to pick your state first before you even start with this process, because the state that you pick is going to determine which credentialing agency you should use, like which credentialing agency is going to be the best for you. Second, even once you have selected a credentialing agency, which service to choose, right? Should you go with ECR? Should you go with type 1? What should you choose, right? And third thing is the state that you pick is also going to determine your timeline with respect to how long this whole process is going to take. So remember, the first thing that you're going to have to do is pick a state, okay? Now, like all of you correctly mentioned, some people said that they pick a state which is easy. I think that's pretty much what everybody answered, right? Here's what my recommendation is when you pick a state. First and foremost, pick a state that aligns with your goals. They could be career goals, they could be professional goals. What I mean by that is when I talk about like your dream goals, right? Say, for example, you've always wanted to live and work in New York. That was your dream. Or you've always wanted to live and work in California. Like ever since you were a kid, you were like, I want to be in Seattle, or I wanted to be in California. And if you feel like that's your goal, I would say stick to it. There is nothing wrong with that, okay? Definitely make sure that you stick to your goal and pick the state where you want to live, okay? If you have a state in mind, pick that, okay? And then the second thing is going to be picking an easy state, okay? If you are somebody who's flexible, right? In that case, definitely go with a state that's easy, and we will talk about which states are easy. But if you are somebody who has family commitments, right? A lot of times you have family, you have a husband, or you have a wife, or you have parents who live in a particular state, like say New Jersey, and you know that you're going to live in New Jersey. It really doesn't make sense for you to go ahead and do a California evaluation, or for you to go ahead and do a Texas evaluation just because you think it's easy, okay? So don't do that. If you feel like, if you have a dream state that you want to live in and you know that you're going to live there, definitely go ahead, start with that state. Or if you have like family commitments to, like if you have family in a particular state and you know you're going to live there, pick that state. Don't pick another state just because somebody else did it and they said it was easy. Don't do that, okay? Because that can actually prolong your timeline, okay? And then last but not the least, if you are a student, right, and if you know that you're going to get a CPT, but you still have to be on campus, that means, like say for example, you're a student in Texas and you get a CPT, but you still have lectures on campus, right? In that case, that means you're not going to leave Texas. In that case, you are better off starting with that state. Don't start with another state, okay? It's not like California is the best state for everybody, or Florida is the best state for everybody, or just because your friend did it from this state, it's going to be the best case for you. No, okay? So first, when you're making a decision, make sure look at your non-negotiables. If you know you're going to be in a particular state, that's the state that you start with, okay? Now, if you are somebody who's more flexible, you're like, I really don't care. As long as it's easy, I'm happy to move wherever it is possible, right? That's when these other states sort of come into the picture, okay? Some of the common states, and this will vary for every single person. I'm going to list a bunch of states. One state might be better for you, one state might be better for somebody else, okay? But the very common states that most of the students sort of select, okay, would be your California, Connecticut, Colorado, right? Maryland is another good one. Florida is another good state. And then Delaware is another good state, right? These are very common states. I'm going to add New Jersey to the list just because for New Jersey, it's very close to New York. And like we discussed, New York recently changed its rules. And if you are somebody who's sort of living in New York, you really have limited options there, right? So you're looking at all the neighboring states, right? So these are some of the most common states that you can look at, okay, which have pretty much similar deficits, okay? Now, for all of these states, right, the basic requirement, okay, as long as you graduated after 2017, okay, for most of these states, the basic requirement is going to be to meet the CWT 6 criteria, which requires 170 credits, okay? If you graduated before 2017, okay, in that case, you will be required to meet the CWT 5 criteria or CWT 4 criteria, depending on whenever you graduated, okay? In which case, you might need about 150 credits, okay? But ideally, most of the people who are currently applying, right, they have to meet this requirement, okay? And then another thing to remember, this sort of goes into nitty-gritties. For example, for states like Delaware, if you are applying for the very first time, like say you're not licensed in the US and you're applying for the very first time, and say you graduated in 2015. So if Delaware is the first state you apply to, they will expect you to do a CWT 6 evaluation. But say, for example, you're already licensed in California and now you're endorsing your license to Delaware, then Delaware will require you to do a CWT 5 evaluation, okay? So even when you are selecting the states, okay, remember there are a lot of, that's why I said there's no one state that fits every single person, okay? And that's where individualized, or, you know, like really thinking through what your situation is very, very important, okay? Because there are state specific rules as well. But the ones that I've listed usually tend to be a little bit on the easier end for most of the students, okay? Okay, moving on to the next one, okay? Once you have selected the state that you want to select, right? The second step is going to be selecting a credentialing agency. Now, there are a lot of different credentialing agencies. There is FCCPT, IERF, CGFNS, ICD. There are a lot of different credentialing agencies. Based on experience of having worked with so many students, I would suggest IERF and FCCPT as the top two choices, okay? This is purely based on a personal experience, okay? Can you go with other credentialing agencies? Yes, definitely you can go with other credentialing agencies, but these two are usually the most commonly used agencies by most of the students, okay? They both have their own pros and cons, okay? Ideally, if you are a US citizen or a green card holder, right? If you're a US citizen or you're a green card holder, or if you know that you're not going to need a healthcare worker certificate, okay? In that case, both agencies are equally good for you. Go with any of those, okay? It's fine. But if you are a foreign trained physiotherapist who will need a visa, okay? If you are somebody who's going to need a visa, definitely go with FCCPT, okay? So this is when you're selecting your credentialing agency, your visa is something you should definitely look at. Okay, like I mentioned, if you're a US citizen, go with either, it really doesn't matter. But if you need a work visa like an H1B or a TN visa, okay, if you're a Canadian citizen and you need a TN visa, again, FCCPT is going to be a better choice for you. Okay. The benefit of FCCPT is that it helps you with the visa process, which is your healthcare worker certificate. Okay, and we will have a webinar on this in the future. Okay, today's goal is mainly to get started and selecting the correct services and agencies and stuff. Okay, but just remember, with FCCPT, the benefit is if you need a visa, it will help you with the healthcare worker certificate requirement. Second benefit of FCCPT is that it is accepted in 50 states. Okay, it is accepted in all the 50 states. So in the future, if you want to move to another state, it is going to be beneficial. Okay, the only caveat, well, there are two caveats about this. Is one, the timeline is very, very long. You have to wait for about 16 to 18 weeks on an average. Sometimes because they are also slammed with so many students and they have a huge caseload as well, right? So sometimes it does take a little bit longer for them to give you the report. So the timeline is the cons, right? If you're talking about pros and cons, it does have really good pros, which is visa-wise, it's helpful and it's accepted in all the 50 states, okay? And then the other cons is the cost. This is the most expensive credentialing agency out there, okay? With respect to IERF, the benefit is that it's a lot more time efficient, okay? So if you're a US citizen or a green card holder, you can definitely take advantage of the IERF because it's only, I think it's about 12 to 13 weeks. So you're saving at least minimum 1 month to 6 weeks. You're saving if you go with IERF. Also, it's about 1/3 the price of FCCPT. So it's a lot. The pros of IERF is that it is very timely and very, very cost effective for you. Okay. The cons of IERF is if you need a visa, you will eventually have to go through FCCPT again. So, you have to submit all your documents from your home country and everything, right? So the cons is that for visa purposes, it doesn't have a healthcare worker certificate related service. And the other thing is this is not accepted in all the 50 states. It's accepted in about 25 to 30 states, which is also excellent. Those are a lot of states, okay? And pretty much all the states that I previously mentioned, IERF is accepted in pretty much all of those states, okay? The easy states that I spoke about. So IERF is accepted in all those easy states, but not in all the 50 states, okay? So that's the only thing. So I'm going to say not all states, but majority of the states, okay? So those are the pros and cons of each. So again, depending on your specific situation and where you stand, you must pick the credentialing agency accordingly, okay? The next thing is going to be sending all the documents. So once you've figured out your state, and then once you've figured out which credentialing agency you're going to go with, okay, the third step that you're going to do is you have to send all the documents and forms, okay? Remember, there are two different things. Let's talk about all of the forms first, okay? Now, there are certain forms that you will send to FCCPT, and then there are certain forms that your school will send to FCCPT or IERF, okay? With respect to, so everything that I've shared with you over here is from the FCCPT website, okay? Just to make sure you don't miss anything. But for IERF, it's pretty much the same requirement, okay? So with respect to what you will send to FCCPT directly, and we're talking about forms, okay, there is a notarized attestation form which will have your photo, okay, and then you have to get it notarized as well before you can send it to FCCPT, okay? And you also have to send a copy of your diploma if required, okay? And then the other one is your school will have to fill out the academic verification form. They need to fill out the clinical internship form, and they need to fill out the licensure verification form. Okay, so these are the three different forms that your school has to fill out, and then the other ones you will have to fill out. Okay, and then the next thing is going to be sending all the documents. Okay, documents includes your transcripts, mark sheets, syllabus, all of those things. Remember, every single document has to be sent by the school, okay? Every single document has to be sent by the school. If you are looking at what is it that you will send, it's pretty much, this is the main form that you will send. That's it, right? Everything else has to be sent by your school. So here is a checklist for you. Feel free to take a screenshot or you can save this as well. Okay. Remember, the first and foremost, most important thing is you need to have your official transcripts. Okay. So you need to have your official transcripts. Okay. If you are from a country where you don't get transcripts and you get mark sheets, for example, in India, you get mark sheets, you don't get transcripts, then those mark sheets have to be converted to transcripts. Okay. So you will have to still have a combination of transcript of hours as well as the individual mark sheet in that case. Okay. So that's going to be the first thing. Second is going to be your course syllabus with emphasis on the word detailed. Okay, so the word detailed is very, very important because when it comes to a detailed course syllabus, right, this document over here is going to determine how many deficits you have. Okay, what the credentialing agency does is credentialing agency has a checklist of courses. Okay, like they have an MSK course, a cardio course, a wound course, right? They have this whole checklist. Now they are going to take your syllabus and they're going to compare. Okay, does your syllabus have MSK? Does your syllabus has examination? Does your syllabus have wound care, right? So they're going to compare it. So if something was taught in your school, but it's not mentioned in the syllabus, you are not going to get credit for it. Okay, so make sure the syllabus is as detailed as possible. I know sometimes depending on the country that you are from, you might have a little bit of a sway on that, but probably not a whole lot, right? Because school obviously has an established syllabus which you have to use, right? But just it's always helpful for it to be as detailed as possible. Okay. The next thing is going to be, of course, your clinical details on the clinical experience, because if you look at the credits that you need some general education credits, you need professional education credits, and you need clinical credits. Okay, so make sure that you're sending your clinical documents as well. Okay. There are some countries for which you have to send the secondary education documents as well. Okay, but those are just for select countries. Okay, and then the last thing is going to be license verification. Now, if you are from a country where you are required to have a license or a license number in order to practice, in that case it is better to submit the license verification, because there are certain states in the US that require you to show proof of licensure in your home country. Okay, not every state requires it, but there are certain countries that do require you to show proof of licensure in your country. So just make sure you submit those, and if you're applying to one of those states, make sure you submit those documents ahead of time. Okay. And then sometimes what some students do is they usually take CLEP and TOEFL and everything ahead of time, right? So in that case, make sure all of these documents are sent online. Okay. All the documents that I listed over here have to be sent to the school in a paper copy format. Okay, they have to be sent to the school in a paper copy format. Ideally, foreign schools they don't usually recommend emailing the documents. Okay, it has to be a paper copy, needs to be sent. That's the recommendation. Okay, but if you've done anything from a US organization, okay, or if you've taken a course in the US, then you can actually send all of this electronically. Okay, you can send all of these documents electronically. For CLEP, what you will do is you will go to the CLEP website, okay, and when you're sending the documents, you can just enter the code for FCCPT or IERF, and CLEP will email everything to FCCPT. Okay, same thing for TOEFL. You can go to your ETS website, and then you can, wherever you want the documents to be sent, you just enter the FCCPT or the IERF code and it will be sent electronically. And same thing, if you've done a course from a US institution, again, just go to the website of the school. They usually have a way to send electronic transcripts. Just go ahead and enter FCCPT's email over there, and the school will send it to FCCPT or IERF. Okay. You usually have to pay a little bit to do this electronically, but it's very, very smooth. It's very, very easy. Okay. Awesome. So now that you're done with the 3 steps, one was identifying the state. Second one was, picking your credentialing agencies. Third was sending all the documents, right? Now the question is waiting, right? Now you're going to wait until the credentialing agency comes back to you, okay? Once the credentialing agency finishes your evaluation, there are two things they can do. One is they will go ahead and tell you, yes, you are all set. You have no deficits, okay? And yes, this does happen, okay? A lot of times FCCPT or IERF will just come back and say, hey, we don't have any deficits, you are all set, okay? The second thing that will happen is you will have deficits, okay? In this case, you will have deficits. And if you do have deficits, in that case, you will have to go ahead and take the courses, okay? In that case, you will go ahead and you have to start taking the courses, okay? I see there's a question in chat. What do you do after you have no deficits from FCCPT? I will talk about that. That's your step number 5, okay? But let's talk about step number 4 first. So if you don't have any deficits, you're all set with this step. You can go to the next one, okay? But if you do have some deficits, in that case, you will be required to take some extra courses, okay? Now, there are a lot of different schools that offer courses, okay? There are a lot of different TDPT schools. There are a lot of schools outside the US as well that offer the courses. Can you take the course from any school? The general answer, the very generic answer is yes. A lot of courses are accepted, but you will realize that only some courses are accepted for certain deficits. Let me tell you a very common mistake that students make, okay? Students usually tend to reach out to one school, okay, and they, let's say it's school A, okay, so students will usually reach out to one school, and that one school will say, oh, okay, take these 5 courses from our school and you will be all set. Is this the right way to go about with it? 100% yes, absolutely, right? Is this perhaps the most efficient time-wise as well as money-wise? Is this the most efficient way for you to go about with this? Probably not, okay? Because a couple of things. When you look at all the different TDPT schools, the prices, and let's talk about money, right? Because money is a huge factor. Just talking about money, right? Even if you get started with your ECR or Type 1 process with FCCPT, right? It's close to $1,300, okay? Approximately $1,300, right? Now, when you do your reevaluation, you are going to pay $800, okay? And if you have some deficits, per credit, you are paying anywhere between $400 to $1,000, okay, per credit. So imagine if you have 5 deficits, that could be about $2,000 to $5,000, which is a lot of money, right? So remember, money is also an important thing to consider over here. So what a lot of students do is they go to one school and they say the school will tell them where to do the courses from, or they'll ask a friend where they did it and that's what they will do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the trick to save money and to save time in this process is actually to do the courses from different schools. You can really save thousands of dollars, not even hundreds. You can actually save thousands of dollars if you do, and time if you do this from different schools, okay? So what happens is students go to school A. Remember, the per credit price is anywhere between $400 to $1,000 per credit, right? So it's a lot of money, right? If you happen to directly contact this $1,000 school and the school says, yeah, we totally offer all these courses. Now you just spent $1,000 for it when you could have only spent $400, right? So that's a lot of money, right? Another thing, so that's one thing. And then another thing that happens is, say you have 5 credits, or you have 5 deficits, okay? You might think that, oh, I should go to the $400 school because obviously it makes common sense, right, to go to a school that offers cheaper credits. So what happens is, if you have 5 deficits and you go to a $400 school, they will say, okay, here are the 5 courses. Okay, here are 5 courses that will help you fulfill all the 5 deficits. So now you're spending $2,000 for this, right? But maybe had you gone to the $1,000 school, they would have said you only need 1 course to finish all 5 deficits. And now you could have actually finished this in $1,000 and you would have to study 1 course versus having to study 5 different courses to fulfill your deficits. Does that make sense? And this is an information that is lacking out there. This is the information that you're not going to find on Facebook or anywhere because nobody talks about this, okay? So please don't go to one school because it's the cheapest, or don't go to a school just because a school said that, yeah, we offer all these courses, or your friend said that, oh, I did it from here, you also do it from here. Calculate, because you might end up saving a lot of time and a lot of money. Also, a lot of schools don't allow you to do, like for example, in this case, if you have 5 courses, certain schools don't allow you to do 5 courses at one time. Okay, they will allow you to do a maximum of 3 courses or 2 courses at a time. In which case, now you need to wait for 2 semesters. So 3 months, 1 semester, and 3 months other semester to finish these courses because you went with a cheaper school. Versus here, you could have finished it in 3 months instead of 6 months. Okay, so there's a lot of calculation that goes on the back end over there. So make sure when you are going through this process and you're making a decision, be wise about it. Okay, make sure you're calculating and not relying on not just, believing what one person says. Okay. Okay. The next thing is going to be finding out, which is going to be your step 5, okay, which is fulfilling the state specific requirements. Okay, so say for example, like we mentioned over here, there are 2 outcomes. One is they say you have no deficits, in which case you will directly jump to stage 5, right, your step 5. And then the second one is say you have deficits. Okay, if you have deficits, be smart, do your research, okay, and make sure you take courses at different schools, with different being the word, because it's going to help you save a ton of time and thousands of dollars. Okay, and this is something that FACTS does assist you with, which is finding out what's the best combination of courses. Once you finish taking those courses, what you will do is you are going to go ahead and apply for a re-evaluation. Okay, you're going to go ahead and apply for a re-evaluation, and once you finish your re-evaluation, you should be all set. Okay, you should be all set to move to step number 5. Okay, this is where you're also looking at your state specific requirements. Okay, now let's talk about state specific requirements, because this is again where we sort of dive into easy versus more challenging states, right? So for example, let's talk about California, right? Let's do California versus Florida. Okay, and this is why I said the answer is, it's not a one general response for every single, it's not a one general response for everybody that, yeah, everybody go to California, it's easy. Everybody go to Florida, it's easy. No, depending on your personal, I'll tell you the factors: your work experience, your education, your year of graduation, your country of origin, right? All of that. Do you have a degree from the US or not? What is your visa status? You should pick a state based on all of these different factors, okay? Because for some it might be easy, for some not, okay? California and Florida, the common thing is if you graduated after 2017, both of these states will require 170 credits. Let me write it in between so you know it's for both, okay? Both of them will follow CWT 6 criteria, right? So for example, for both of these, if you're asking me in chat which state should I go with, California or Florida, I'm going to say the requirements for CWT6 are exactly the same for both those states. So it really doesn't matter what you pick. Okay, now there are certain things that are different for both of these states, right? For example, if you look at California does require you to take TOEFL, okay, versus Florida requires you to take a jurisprudence exam. Now, California also has a jurisprudence exam, but the jurisprudence exam is open book for California. So I'm not really going to count it because it's not a lot of hard work for me to clear that, right? But if I'm going with Florida, I am taking a jurisprudence exam, but the benefit is I'm not taking TOEFL, right? Over here, the benefit is I don't have to worry, no worries about jurisprudence, okay? Because jurisprudence is going to be an easy exam. So do you see the benefit of both, right? Each has their own pros and cons, right? So when you are making a decision, right, you have to think about how good is my English? If my English is really not that great, or I don't want to take TOEFL, or if I've taken TOEFL and not passed it, I am actually better off going with Florida. It's much more time saving. I'm going to save money as well because I'm not spending $400 to take TOEFL, right? So Florida is going to be a better choice for you. And all you have to do is take a jurisprudence exam, right? But if you have a degree from the US, or if your English is pretty good and you don't mind taking TOEFL, you might actually be better off going with California, okay? Or if you have a degree from the US, it actually you don't really have to study for jurisprudence. In that case, if you have a degree from the US, go with California. Okay, so this is where you have to know the nitty-gritties of every single state, because that is why I said, if you go with FCCPT, FCCPT is going to take 16 weeks for both these states. And when you get your report, it's going to be the exact same report for both these states, okay? For California also you have to do wound debridement course. For Florida also you have to do the wound debridement course. It doesn't matter, okay, which state you're going with. It really doesn't matter. What matters is those state-specific requirements. Let me look at my personal background or my history. I have a degree from the US. I don't want to study for jurisprudence. Let me just go with California. It's way easy for me, right? Versus I don't have a degree from US, but I'd rather study for jurisprudence versus studying for TOEFL. Then Florida is a better state for you. So depending on your personal situation, you can make a decision about which state is going to be time efficient, better, and cost effective for you, okay? So that's going to be the next thing, which is fulfilling the state-specific requirements, okay? With respect to, I'll give you general things, right? With respect to certain requirements, TOEFL tends to be one of the most common requirements for most of the states. The second thing is going to be the jurisprudence exam. This is another thing that's required by most of the states. And then there are certain states that require you to do a supervised clinical practice, okay? So if you are wondering what are the state-specific requirements, most of the states have one of these three requirements, okay? A very common question that we get asked on emails, Facebook Messenger, Facebook posts, Instagram Messenger, everywhere is TOEFL mandatory? And the answer is it depends, okay? Many states need TOEFL, but a lot of states waive TOEFL as well. But they waive TOEFL depending on your background, okay? So it's not that if Maryland waived TOEFL for somebody from India, does not mean that Maryland is going to waive TOEFL for somebody from another country where they did not study in English. Maybe they studied in Turkey and they studied in the Turkish language. Maryland might not waive TOEFL for them, okay? So just because they waived TOEFL for somebody and somebody on the internet told you, yeah, they waived TOEFL, doesn't mean they're going to waive it for you, okay? The criteria for waiving it, yes, 100% they waive TOEFL, but the criteria is different based on your unique situation. So make sure you are aware of that, okay? And again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out, okay? The next thing is going to be jurisprudence. With respect to jurisprudence exam, some states have open book jurisprudence exam, and then some states have closed book jurisprudence exam, okay? California, North Carolina, right? All these, New Jersey, they all have open book jurisprudence exam, but like Florida and, you know, some states have a closed book exam. And then the last one is going to be supervised clinical practice. This varies, right? It's about 9 months in California. I believe it's about 6 months in Pennsylvania. Okay, so again, it varies. Can you waive these? Yes, these can also be waived in a lot of states, not all the states, but in a lot of states, these supervised clinical practice requirements can also be waived, but it depends. Just because they waived it for your friend does not mean they're going to waive it for you. For each state, there are different criterias based on why they waive it for one person versus why they will not waive it for another person, okay? But just something to be mindful of based on when you're going through the process, right? And again, we do have a team of advisors who can sit with you, collect your background information, and then help you figure out, okay, considering you are, like say you have a master's degree and you live in New York and you can't apply to New York, so let's have you apply to New Jersey. What are your requirements? Well, maybe you should apply to this state, other state, which is going to be easier, right? So we do have a team of advisors who can sit with you on a one-on-one basis and help you with figuring that out, okay? Somebody did mention, can you share regarding the Illinois state? Yes. With respect to the Illinois states, once you have that FCCPT, once FCCPT comes back and tells you that you're approved, you're going to go ahead and create an account on the IDPRF, okay? I may be misspelling it, okay? But it's the IDPRF, which is the Illinois State Boards account. Once you create an account and you log in, it sort of shows you what are the additional requirements that are needed. Illinois does not have any specific additional requirements, like they don't expect you to take a supervised clinical practice or anything of that sort. So once FCCPT is done with the evaluation, just make sure they're sending it to the Illinois State Board and make sure you are creating an account on the website. And then once you create an account on the portal, it will sort of guide you with the next steps, okay? And then they just make sure they don't actually require you to submit a whole lot of additional documents. Like Illinois is one of the straightforward states once you're done with it, okay? So that's going to be fulfilling state-specific requirements and registering for the NPTE, okay? With respect to registering for the NPTE, what you are going to do is it is going to be on the FSBPT website. Okay, once you register for the NPTE, you will register for the NPTE on the FSBPT website. This is your Federation of State Board website. It doesn't matter which state you're creating your account in or in which state you're getting licensed in. Okay, like say you're going through California, Florida, North Carolina. Once you are done with the IERF or the FCCPT process, okay, you will also create an account on the state board's website. Okay, and the credentialing agency will send all the documents to the state board's website. Once the state board sort of receives all of these documents and stuff, and even if you log into your portal, it will show you what all extra stuff is needed, right? For example, there are some states that will require you to submit a criminal background check, okay? There are some states that will require you to do a child abuse course. There are some states that will require you to take Jurisprudence Exam before your NPTE, and then there are some states that will require you to take the Jurisprudence Exam after the NPTE. But whatever is that requirement, again, we can assist you with that, or you can log into your portal and then you can find that out automatically. Some states require you to submit fingerprinting proof. Okay, they require you to submit proof for fingerprinting. So all those requirements have to be met, and usually that all those become available or visible to you right once you log into like your portal on the state board's website. Okay, and once you go through all of that, you can also go to the FSBPT website and create an account so that you can register for the NPTE. Okay. And that is actually the last step, okay, in your process, because the next step is just going to be to pass the NPTE and to start working as a physiotherapist, right? Start working as a physical therapist, so that way you can go ahead and start your journey as a physio in the US. That is it that I had for you today. I see there were a lot of questions in chat, and I see that the team has done a phenomenal job of answering the questions. Also, feel free to send us an email if you have any queries. You can reach out to us at contact@faxpt.org. We do have a website as well as Instagram page and YouTube page. I know somebody asked where can they find the recording of the webinar. It is going to be on YouTube. We usually upload it within 2 weeks of doing the webinar. So you can make sure you subscribe and click on the notification button so you automatically get a notification once you subscribe or once we upload it. Okay. And also, thanks again, everybody, for joining.